Emma, welcome to the Back Pocket. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm so excited to be here with you too.
I feel
It's a
like
long
it's
time coming. I mean, we chatted really quick at Brogan's November project, and that was our first time meeting. And while we were talking, I was like, "Wait, we got to stop talking and we got to record a podcast because this is where it needs to happen."
I'm glad that you thought that because it's so funny. Like when I'll meet people, sometimes I just like, for the most part, like don't shut up. So sometimes I'm like, man, like I just like I hope I didn't like freak him out or like scare him off because I was just like, wow, right in your face like when I first met you. So, but like you said, like it's a long time coming. Like I've met you before. I mean, I feel like we've been at similar events before, which I'm sure we'll talk about later on. But yeah, this is a long time coming.
it's great. It's great to be here, and I will say too. I was looking back, because at the end of every episode, we usually ask every guest like, who do you challenge to get us to get on the next show or like on the podcast? And as it turns out, last year when we had Sophie Van Serksum on, she recommended you and had like a 5 minute sonnet on why you were like the best person ever. And as it turns out, we didn't take her advice for almost a year, but I'm glad we're finally following up.
I actually texted her yesterday and I was like, oh my God, I'm going on the podcast. And so that's so sweet. I love that she did that.
Yeah,
Her
and
podcast is awesome too.
it's a good podcast. I have nothing but great things to say about the Straight Candid Girls.
Yeah, they're firing on all cylinders. They have content that what the best part about Straight Candid is, and us helping produce that whole rigmarole is that's something that like Declan and I we can't wrap our heads around what they're talking about. And I'm sitting there producing it, and I'm just like jaw dropped every single time they open their mouth. And they already have a dedicated following. Like they're getting listener submissions and whatnot. I mean, I'm just so proud of those girls. They work very hard, so it's going really well to start.
They should have a camera on you during one of the episodes and get your reactions as they. Have you already done that? I would be surprised if you haven't done that already.
We need to incorporate it more. Is the moral of
Okay.
the story?
It,
Yes.
I've been saying this since episode one. Andy's a little camera shy. He doesn't want to be on the show.
Oh, I am too, actually. That's why I was like saying before, where I'm like, oh, I feel good, like back in this, like I'm in the corner of my office right now, and I'm like, it's very, safe spot for me. I'm like, as much, I have a podcast and, but I'm not used to being the one interviewed or, being in front of the camera because my podcast has completely moved to just audio. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Well, wait, why are you not doing? We shouldn't be getting on this tangent, but I'd need to know. Why aren't you filming your audio? Or why aren't you filming your podcast?
Well, I'm not. Well, honestly, okay, so I tried doing Zooms like this and I did not have the level of knowledge that I do now about audio. So when I was doing the interviews, I was just doing like through our computer and I was like, this sounds so bad. Also, I mean, I do think video is like the best thing ever. But I have had a really good experience with interviewing women over the phone because some of the guests that I've had are just would never say yes to being on video. And I've been able to interview them because they're like so much more comfortable over the phone. But meh, I don't know.
Yeah, we released a podcast 2 weeks ago titled "Winning in the Podcast Industry," and one of the biggest takeaways for growing your brand is video podcasts because
Oh, yeah.
the way you can use that and put it on TikTok and Instagram and the things that go viral that you don't even expect, it's crazy. I think right now that the TikTok, and this is another tangent that we don't need to go on, but I'm gonna, the TikTok audience, the organic traffic is so real, and we're starting to notice it through Straight Candid. Some of their stuff has gone viral and gotten close to 1 million views, and their podcast listens spike with that. It's incredible. So I truly believe like those 1 million views are real because then people are going to Straight Candid's fan link, which has all of the podcast links to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and those numbers are spiking. And we had one of our best weeks yet. I say we
Wow.
because I feel like we are part of the team, and So moral of the story is you got to do video on your podcast.
I know. It'll happen again. I'm sure we'll talk about this, but last year was a whole year. I mean, it was for everyone, but I definitely took a big pause with what I was up to. So,
well, yeah, I think let's start there. So we all know this, and if the listeners don't know this, no worries, we'll get you caught up to speed. But you are the founder of BA Women, and I'd love to just hear kind of like your background in BA Women, and then I would love to hear your year last year, because one more thing on that is like when we prep these interviews with guests such as yourself, usually it's just like we send them the calendar invite, and then the first time we meet them is when they show up in the Zoom room or in person. But for you to respond or send a separate email just with the subject, I'm so jacked, and like to dive in more on like what we're going to talk about, and just some really good background information, like we really appreciated that, and we knew that this was going to be a good podcast and have good energy simply from that. So anyways, tangent there, but I would just love to hear kind of your background with BA and how that trickled down into your year last year.
Yeah, so BA Women stands for Badass Women. I created it in 2000. The idea was in 2017. The first event I had was in 2018, March. But BA Women is a community of badass women. The first event was in Minneapolis and is expanded. We have women from all over the country now that are involved with BA Women, and it's an evolution. I mean, I think that the biggest thing about BA Women is that we are, as a collective, a conversation, and an evolving conversation. And I like to think of like what the business is as like a catalyst for people pursuing what they really want, women pursuing what they really want. So kind of like my background with it. So, oh my gosh. Let me start with how I created it, because I could tell you, like, I was in medical sales when I first made this. Like, my entrepreneurial background is like, we could have 5 podcasts about it, but at the time I was in med device, and I just, it was a good job and, a good company, but there was definitely like this missing creativity side for me. And I did a seminar called the Landmark Forum. It's all about like transformational work. And I did it like going into it being like, okay, so I know there's something more for me right now. Like, I don't know what it is. And what happened was the seminar like showed me so many blind spots in my life that were preventing me from doing the things that I really wanted. And one of the biggest blind spot for me was women, which was like, I would have never thought this. And I discovered it because one of the leaders was a woman, and there was a woman and man like teaching this seminar. And whenever the man would speak, I'd be like, yeah, totally get you, like connecting. And then the woman would speak and I'd be like, who does she think she is? Like what, I can't, whatever, and these are all like conversations I'm having in my head. And one thing they said in the seminar was, that little voice that you have in your head right now? You're like, yeah, the one that's saying, what little voice? I was like, that's the voice that's running your life. And I realized like in that moment that my judgments and assessments of women weren't like, they were completely preventing me from being the woman that I wanted to be. And so it just like became this whole mission for me to, as weird as this sounds, have conversations with the women I resisted the most. So I started to like go to women that I was super intimidated by, or like, I'll never forget talking to this super badass woman named Jessie Ruoff. She's in Minneapolis. And I like went up to her and like, can we talk after class? She's a fitness coach. And she's like, yeah. And I went up to her and I was like, I'm so intimidated by you. Like, I just like totally like, I'm so straight with her. And I was like, but I admire you so much. And, like, it just was such a profound conversation. And so I just started to continue to have more and more conversations like this. And, in those conversations, I realized that one, like the women I resisted the most were actually the women I wanted to be. Like they were showing me traits. Like Jessie just has this confidence. She walks in a room. If you haven't met her, like everyone listening that knows her knows, like this woman walks in a room and you're like, fucking Jessie's here. Like, and so yeah, like I just, continue to have these conversations. And when I had these conversations, I all of a sudden it like occurred to me as like, I'm gonna put an event together. And like I had no idea what I was doing. I was just like, I'm gonna get all of these women in a room together because I know women that are all over. Like I've never really been in a super tight clique of women and I've actually always been super close with guys. So but I realized that like I actually do know a ton of women but they're just all in these different like groups of people and most of them are the leaders of like their communities. So yeah, I had all of them get together and the first event we had almost 200 women at it.
Holy
and then
smokes.
yeah, and then the last one we had, which was in 2000, I'm like, what year is it right now? 2019, I think was the last one we had in October, and that was over 350 women. So
to like quickly grab the timeline, what was it? What was the transition from going to the seminar, realizing that you had this need and something that you wanted to fill, to starting to reach out to women that you looked up to, that you were tad intimidated by, and then to starting the event? Like, what was that timeline? Was that a couple weeks, a couple months?
Oh, it was, I mean, the reaching out to women was instantly. I mean, it was during the seminar. It was like, I saw, like, seeing this new possibility in my life. I was like, I have to act on this. Like, this cannot disappear. Like, I have to do something about it right now. So, yeah, I mean, it was, August. I started having conversations. By December, actually, I think the idea for the event was August or September. And then I said I was going to do the event in October and was like, oh my God, like, no, like I pushed it back and pushed it into the next year. And then I did it in March. So it was quick, really quick.
Wow. So when what was kind of like was there a resistant aspect in the creation of it? Like, dive in a little bit more into like that first setup of like because 200 women for your first event sounds bananas. Like that's a lot of women in one room.
It was.
So walk me through like maybe like that day of or like that moment where you're like, okay, I just organized 200 people in a room. How am I going to respond here? Just like walk me through that first day. It sounds nuts.
Well, the actual event in itself, like there's definitely a moment that I remember that I'll share about that, and then I'll kind of share about like actually the process of building it, because there were so many moments where I was like, there's no way this is going to happen. Like I can't, like so many, I mean, venues, like I was trying to get a venue to donate their space because like I had zero budget. I didn't have any money set aside for this. And like, there's gotta be a fit for us. Right. So I mean, I went to I'll start with this. I went to all your traditional like venues, like, the venues, of Minneapolis, like Aria or like whatever, all these big venues. And it was like, here's the price. I'm like, okay, definitely don't have thousands of dollars to do this event. I remember meeting with event professionals because I'm like, well, obviously I want to learn from people who are doing this. And they're like, oh, no way can you do this without, a $10,000 budget or like whatever. And I'm just like determined. I'm like, no, there's got to be a way. And eventually I was connected with someone at Coco, which is now called Field Collective in Minneapolis. And it's the downtown Minneapolis location. And they bet on me. They were like, this sounds amazing. Olivia was one of the women, and they were the community organizers, and they're like, let's do it. And I had like I'll never forget getting the like email back saying yes. And I'm just like, do they know who I am? Like, I don't have any experience. Like, do they, like, I was just like, oh my God. But yeah, so that was an amazing, I mean, I remember one of my coaches who I was working with at the time through the seminar messaged me long after the first event, and he goes, remember when you almost gave up because you couldn't find a venue? He goes, imagine what a loss that would have been, or something like that. And it's just like, so, I mean, it's so great to get reminders like that when you're like, oh my God, I forgot I almost quit because of this.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, because all you really needed was the space. You had
Yes.
the people, they were ready to come. All you needed was an actual space.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what's really cool about the early progression and the creation of this is the space was actually for yourself. You felt like you wanted, or you weren't pushing yourself enough as a woman, so you were reaching out to other people, and then you were like, okay, this was awesome, and now I feel uplifted, and I want to start sharing this energy and helping other people feel what I'm able to feel. So that, I just want to give you like a round of applause, like kudos to you for seeing that in yourself and then going out to create that space for others, because that, at the end of the day, that give back mentality, it fills up your cup so much. And to do it in this way, it's incredible.
Thank you. I appreciate that a lot, because putting yourself out there about something that's like kind of an icky thing, where you're like, hey, like I've been judging women, right? Or like, hey, I have been putting women down, and like being honest about that was like scary every single time I had the conversation, and it still is. Like I still am working on it, and but every time I shared that, every single woman was like, "Oh my God, me too. Oh my God, me too." Like same thing, same thing. Even saying, "I've always been best friends with guys." Like most women at BA Women had these exact same experience. So like, yeah, like guys are my best friend, and there was just like no space for that either. But yeah, yeah.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think? Because like we have a good friend group in Minnesota, and like the majority of the girlfriends that we have that hang around us are like they just hang out with us or other guys, and they have like, you know, maybe a roommate or two other really really close friends, but for the remainder of it, it's just a bunch of hunks like us. What are those qualities that like from our end, like from a guy's standpoint, that like girls take or latch onto, that they want to, they would, it's so important to them that they'd much rather be around us than they would around females?
I think about that a lot. I mean, I am still trying to figure out the answer to that, to be honest. But one thing that's like in this moment that I'm thinking of right now is I just feel like for women, there's so many like ways we're supposed to behave, or we're expected to be, or expected to, like there's just so much pressure. And I'm, you know, I'm speaking for women right now. There's men, there's a whole nother story about that as well. But there's something about, like for me personally, being friends with men, I just like didn't want to prescribe to the typical, what a typical girly girl looks like or is supposed to be like, or um you know, it was just kind of like I can try on different traits. I can be more free. I can um yeah, I that's kind of like the first thing I'm thinking of, but
Right. No, I see what you're saying. It's like I think we just provide like a balance. Like we don't have the same type of like we don't have the same brain at all. We're very simple. So like for you to be able to just kind of show up, be yourself, and like those small little nuances that would like piss a girl off or make a girl fall in love with you, like guys don't even pick up on those frequencies, and we just kind of look at you as a whole person. That's how I kind of see it.
yeah. Actually, and here's something even more that I've like discovered for myself with my relationship with men is like from a very early age, if I knew that if like men approved of me or liked me, that I was gonna get somewhere, because I just wanted to be accepted. And I mean, there's a whole part of me that's like a total tomboy, like athlete. Like I love, you know, beautiful aesthetics and girly things to an extent, but like having approval from men just like for me meant like oh, this is gonna help me in some way. So I do think there's an aspect for women to know that if they're approved by men, that it is gonna help them, and which is something we're working on.
Sure.
Yeah, well, I think you're spot on with that. From a male's perspective, it's the exact same way, and it's all if a woman like looks at you and she like is enamored by who you are, and that is just uplifting you, and it's all the play of the ego, and like that, it's so crazy how much we invest that energy in like hoping other people will see us and use their perspective to uplift ourselves just to boost our egos. And it is exhausting to have.
Oh my God, yeah. It's
right?
like think of how much I just think about everything up until like this new, just like in 2017 when I had this discovery, how much of my life and I'm still working on it, don't get me wrong, but like how much time I have wasted seeking that approval, and or even from women, but by no means am I perfect. I'm still working on the approval thing.
Absolutely.
And we're also in this entrepreneur lifestyle where we are creating this day to day, and we hold ourselves accountable. So not like we're using other people's perspectives and other people's opinions to like judge and confirm that we're on the right path, because we're so siloed into this own tunnel. It comes from every avenue of caring about what other people think, because we are now in a new position. It's draining. I've been journaling and thinking about it to the same extent you are recently, because of how much thought and energy I put into that aspect. And it's like, Andrew, relax. Like, you're doing well, man. Relax.
Dude, I think there's
I completely hear you.
Emma, can you hit record on your camera? I'm sure it's been 20. We just hit ours.
Oh.
Good accountability check for the people involved.
You're good.
Yeah, but it's so funny because, it's funny that you bring that up, Andrew, with like journaling a bunch on it, because just like from an outsider's perspective, me in my RV in Arizona, watching you kind of go through this like caring a lot about females, having a girlfriend and not having a girlfriend, and like going through like the whole journey, and like your base and your foundation is always yourself. And you don't really realize that potential until maybe something happens, or it's either something really good happens or something really bad happens, right? Like when you find this girl and she's the girl of your dreams and she's like, I'm so in love with you, blah, blah, you're like, dang, that's because I'm a badass. Like, look at me, I triple down myself, I'm good at shit. Then when like you break down and like things go really the wrong way, you're actually left with the same exact thing. Oh man, I have nothing except for me. Like, okay, now like, I'm not spending time on this other person all of a sudden. I always call this the set the world on fire mentality. I might as well spend it on myself, and try and better myself that way. So going through this whole motion, it's like, at the end of the day, simplify it, man. Like it's just you. It's the self-love. It's the tapping into that selfish aspect of yourself and trying to figure out different ways to share that with the world. So with BA Women, I want to kind of understand the timeline. So or not the timeline, but just more of the story. So you start throwing these events. They start kicking ass. They start becoming badass. More badass women are popping up all over the place. They're coming out of the cracks and crevices. They've always been there, but now you're bringing light to this type of badass world. And then it comes crashing down in 2020.
Oh, you just lost you for a second.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Classic.
There you
But so I want to hear like how. No, you're good. I just want to hear kind of how that whole progression went with, scaling in the business in the event era, and then it basically being put at a halt due to COVID in 2020.
Yeah. So, it's funny because after when I was creating it, I definitely saw a huge vision for it. Like I believe that this could be bigger than what I actually was seeing it to be right now. But I didn't at the time know how to get there. And I had the first event, and I remember like I was still in med sales and I was so burnt out. I was like, oh my God, like that was amazing. Okay, now I'm gonna go to work. I remember going to work the next day as if like nothing had happened. And, but I went, and I remember the messages and Instagram tags and all of that being like, when's the next one, and like I now know in like event planning you should always have like something, you know, that they're looking forward to in the future. And at that time I'm like, I have no idea when this next thing is going to be, I didn't even plan on another one. But so yeah, I was like, well, fuck, let's do it. And you know, I learned so much like from what I did wrong the first time, that I was like, I can do this better. And but so then the next event, I think I was in October, and then that one was even bigger. We had, I mean, more sponsors, we had a bigger venue, we had some pretty incredible speakers. We had like Alex Steinman from the Coven speaking.
And this is event number 2.
And this is 2, yep. And so that was incredible. Then the next one we had, I think it was the WeWork one, same thing, growing, bigger sponsors. I mean, WeWork sponsored us. I had Brew Doctor Kombucha. I worked with Minnesota Lynx. It was like, oh my God, like it just was the right timing. It was just, everything was like the right timing. And so I'll never forget, right before 2020, in my mind, I was like, well, I just let's keep scaling. Like, let's keep making this bigger and bigger. And I was like, well, you know, there's huge companies like Girl Boss that were throwing massive events. And I actually started working with Girl Boss as a community leader for them in Minneapolis. And I was like, why can't I do this? Like, I want to do something like this in Minneapolis. Like, the Midwest is so underrepresented. I mean, it's all West Coast, East Coast. I'm like, anyways. So yeah, I was working with a marketing agency for the first time, because I was like, I need help. Like, I've had so many different women as contractors work with me. And I'm like, I just need to hand a bunch of this off to a marketing agency. And I was about to sign a contract with them to plan like over 1,000-person event. And I just, you know, like things were great. And then I didn't sign it because whatever reason, we weren't ready yet. And then COVID hit. And I was like, holy shit, you know, like this is the only revenue we have. This is the only way that our community connects. Like, I mean, we had social media like Instagram, but nothing else. And yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I, in my heart, almost knew that wasn't the right move, but I just was going as fast as I could to keep up and keep going, because so many people told me, like, I hear from so many different entrepreneurs where they're like, if you have something good, like keep going with it. Like, don't stop. Right? Or a lot of times, you know, people can only handle your success for so long, like keep going. And, but in my heart, I just was like, you know, part of what's starting to miss was like the actual connection, because it was just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But yeah, I can tell more about that. But does that kind of help about the storyline? And then I can tell you more about what happened last year.
100%. Like, I'm sure it became like a blessing in disguise to a certain degree, where, you know, it was, I mean, it's unfortunate. Like, you're getting ready to have this big break with this new contract and having 1,000 people in one space. And then this whole thing happens. But I think, you know, along with COVID in general and all the negativity that came from it, I think there was a lot of things that were positive that were born from chaos. We did a podcast on that, I think episode like 300 or 299. But either way, it made people realize it's not all about, maybe like for your sake, it can't be all about in-person events. Like, there's got to be other streams or other things that you do that are equally fulfilling or somewhat close to that. So I'm curious to hear from your sense, like, you're probably saying like, thank God I never signed that contract. Thank God I never went forward with it. But I want to know why that's the case. I want to know why, what was kind of your pivot in the sense?
Well, I had just started the podcast too when this had all happened, and that for me felt really good because these one-on-one conversations were how BA Women started in the first place. So that element of the business was really starting to leave and go away. And I started to do the podcast, and I'm like, oh my God, like this is where I start. Like this is how it started. So that felt really good. And that was right when COVID hit. So, but the reason why, like looking back, I'm like, oh man, that I'm glad that happened because last year I had so many people say like, why don't you do virtual events? Like, let's do virtual events. And I just was like, it's not the same. And I tried a few, like just a few small, like 30 women that I knew to try it out. The first one was great, but then the second one, it just was like, like we've been staring at screens. Like, it's just as hard as I'm trying, this just doesn't feel right to me. And that's kind of like how a lot of things were starting to feel about the business and about even the 1,000-person event. I had a lot of, I asked for a lot of help. Like I definitely ask professionals all the time. But sometimes there's too much advice, and with the events, I just had a lot of input coming in all the time to the extent that I just like didn't even know what I wanted anymore. I didn't even know, like, is this what feels good to me? Like, is this cool? Is this not? Like, I totally questioning myself all the fucking time. And so last year I just stopped everything. And, like I stopped my podcast around, I think like June, and it was like a slow progression of stopping things. But I ended up, when COVID hit, living with Jason Kweens, who you've had on the podcast, I think two different times.
In Wisconsin, right?
I lived in, yeah. So I lived in Cascade, Wisconsin, the Dixon's resident and our home. And I just had this profound experience. And I think he's talked about it in his podcast too. I was listening to the BCE one, how much that changed us from a perspective of living in community. And at the time, I'm like beating myself up because I'm like, oh, I'm not doing anything for BA women's community, right? Like, and if I look back, I'm sure there were some things I was doing, but from like a mass scale, there was like really nothing I felt like I was giving. And I just like threw myself all in on this experience of just being present and living in community. Like my boyfriend Tim was there, Malia was there, Annie, like I think there was like 8 couples that were all there. And it was like one of the best experiences of my life. I mean, there's so many, it did change my life, the trajectory of my life, because there's so many choices that I've made now because of that experience. And even looking back on it now, I really see that like that experience brought me back to like my roots and like who I am and how I was raised, and like how my love for the outdoors, my love for like just Earth. Like I don't even know how to explain it.
Big shout out to Earth on this podcast.
Earth, yes.
I love Earth. I love Earth so much.
Like Earth.
Earth rocks.
But Earth does rock. But yeah, I was my love for natural, like plant medicine, things like we would go into the woods and like pick watercress and put the watercress, like we'd make salad with it. It was just like, and then, oh my God, it was just unbelievable. And in that experience, as COVID was happening, I saw so many people that were alone, and I'm just like, this is not how we're supposed to be. Like, we are not supposed to be alone. We're not supposed to be living alone. we're supposed to be in community. And so I really just like took on last year being with whoever I was with in that moment. And which was definitely hard because I was beating myself up a lot about like not being present as much on, not producing, not feeling like I'm creating things. I'm a very creative person. And yeah, I can tell you all about that more, but
Sure. Well, I
yeah.
think it's just great. Like, I mean, phenomenal story, and I think it's one of those things like you're gonna look back and you're not gonna regret a single thing. Like you're gonna look back and be like, yeah, I lived
Yes.
out in Cascade, Wisconsin, in the middle of nowhere, on the lakeside, watching Jason Coons jump in the water every day. But like, nonetheless, you are in such a cool scenario, in a place where people are gonna ask you, where were you? You know, like people are gonna, where were you when COVID hit, or what were you doing and how did you respond? And you have this amazing story of basically, I got back to who I was, and I hit the reset button and basically I hit Control Alt Delete on my laptop and I said, fuck it, and I'm gonna go right back into it. And your desktop is completely blank, and you have one folder and it just says my old bullshit, and you had the chance to go and click in it and explore more of that if you want, but for the most part it was a clean slate. So I just think that's so cool. And if anyone's listening to this and like, wow, that was really deep, Joe Rogan said that on his podcast with hitting Control Delete on all that stuff, and it all had to do with like that's like his experience of what it's like to take shrooms. So it's this idea that kind of just refocuses your mind. But either
I would
way,
definitely say that's probably accurate.
Right. Exactly. But I just think it's so cool, and not beating yourself up over it, right? Like I am the same way. I get so much anxiety when I'm not creating, when I'm not putting podcasts out, or when I'm not, doing things that I'm normally used to doing, right? Podcasting every week, Instagram post, LinkedIn post, XYZ. But when that stuff is taken away and you can't control any of that stuff, what do you decide to control? And it's insane.
I just feel like one of the biggest things I saw is how much value I have put on myself for what I do, as in the more I do, the more valuable I am. And just like how that belief was running my life. And it still to an extent is, and I'm working on it now that I've discovered that. But I mean, all of a sudden, all these things that I was do more, like none of that was there anymore. And all of a sudden I just feel like worthless. And I'm like, well, that's not the truth, right? Like I am so much more than the things I do, than my title, than my accomplishments. And I mean, that was actually one of the things that I felt like what was happening with BA Women was we were starting to focus more on, well, I'm the CEO of this, or I'm the blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, but like, I'm not that interested in that. Like, I'm really not, I'm really interested in, I think Brogan said it, I listened to his episode with you guys so well, where he's like, when it's like 5 a.m. or whatever, no one has time to talk about, what did he say? Like your Tesla, your whatever job you're in, like no one cares because it's 5 a.m. and we're working out. And the best relationships I've made have been through experiences, through working out, through travel, those are the people that I'm like, you get me, like you see me. And yeah, I mean, that's another thing that I'm like really implementing into BA Women is, I think in the beginning, BA Women was very much of like, badass women are like, we get shit done. Like, the do more, you're badass, like whatever. And now I'm just like, that is so not the truth. Women who, if you're being in alignment with yourself and you're being like fully alive, like whatever really fully like makes you alive is what I'm interested in, and the type of people I'm interested in being around. Because like all like what's the point, you know, like all of the accomplishments, all the shit that like we've done can be gone in a second. Like we learned that last year, like people's jobs were gone after 20 plus years, you know, like so that's the more and more about the brand that I'm like now evolving BA Women into.
I love
and that being investing into one person at a time and taking your time to truly get to know someone, because that in relationship is going to last a lifetime versus if you're in this constant mindset of doing and going through the motions of putting as much on your plate as possible, you don't really have the time and the energy to invest in others, because then at the end of the day you don't have time to invest in yourself. So taking that vision it's speaking waves to me. What you said just a moment ago about having to do more is how you quantify the value that you should uphold yourself. That right there is something that I'm going to take away big time with, because now that things are slowly starting to open back up and there's more there's more availability to be out and about and do things. Like I have things on my plate constantly, and I'm thinking, oh, I can add more. There's an hour window here, I can add more, and it's at the end, and then I go to bed. I'm like, what did I actually do today? You know,
Yes.
what really did I do though? So I think you said it really well. Is like I am currently right now putting value in doing more and quantifying myself as like, okay, you accomplished a lot. But in reality, I don't know if I'm investing when I'm in these moments enough. So well said. It's basically what I want to say.
I love it, man. Well, and I also loved what you said about this idea of like the brand of BA Women is evolving, and it's never this stagnant like brand thing. It's more that is supposed to mean, you know, what you said originally with like just in the word badass. But this idea of like being in a community around people who just want to be the best version of themselves, and like having that creative community that are all feeding off each other. Like we had Mark Dowdle come on our podcast 2 or 3 weeks ago in episode 300, and it was basically the impetus of the podcast was basically having different listeners from the past 4 years call in and talk about their favorite experiences. And one of the things he said that stuck with me was Backpocket is just all about supporting your friends doing what they love and knowing that it's going to make a difference in the world. And I feel like you're finding that same type of feeling in fulfillment from BA Women, where it's like, I want to be around the same type of people as to where I'm at right now, and I can be and find people that are fruitful in the sense that they can do these great things in the world by just being themselves. And it's just, it's such a fun when you start to realize that, so many other doors start to open up. Like I'm thinking for you, like with you being you say on your Instagram, you're a wildly average outdoor enthusiast, and I just love the branding.
Yes, which I hope you too love that. Because okay, so someone said that to me. They're like, you're like a wildly average like outdoors or something like that, and I was like, that's great. And then I was like, where have I heard wildly average before? I was like, where have I heard this? And I'm like, fucking Backpocket. So I was like, you know what, fuck it, I'm keeping it. I think it's great.
It's beautiful.
I was like, I'll be one of your guys' marketing interns.
Yes. Every listener is a marketing intern. We've been trying to spout that off for 4 years. So you've been a marketing intern for quite some time, whether you knew it or not.
That's awesome.
Just saying.
Also, I wanted to say about your last point though, that like wanting to find that group of people, one of my biggest like what I have realized is that wanting, like, you have to go and just make it happen. I think that I spent a lot of high school, a lot of grade school, a lot of college just kind of like waiting for the right group of people, and not to say that I don't have amazing friends in those experiences in my life, but it wasn't until I started making BA Women where I was like, I can make the community that I want to be in. Like, I don't have to keep saying like, oh man, like, you know, I don't want to go to the bars. Like, no one else doesn't want to go to the bars all the time anymore, right? Like, I'm just like, who's gonna hang out with me, you know? And I'm like, well, why don't I just go do something, and then I can invite people. Like, it's just like this shift in your brain that you're like, oh wait, like I can create that. Like I can just make that happen. I just think that's such like an important point, because a lot of people are like, oh, like that'll never work for me. I'm like, well, you just have to go like be the one to create it if you have an idea, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then surrounding yourself with other people that are quote unquote doers of the world is only going to put you in that position time and time again without you having to take initiative, because now
Yes.
they're creating a space as well where they're going to want to incorporate you. And it's not easy because there are a lot of like um, content mindsets out there where it's like I'm going to go in and put in my hours and then I can just decompress and do exactly what everyone else is doing, and that is fine. But to take that a step further and to make sure that you're hitting all of your touch points, it's a difficult spot. And I know like the people that come to mind right away are guys that we've already mentioned, that we've surrounded ourselves with, like Brogan Graham and Jason Coons and Nick McLaughlin with Stationary Astronaut. Like these are guys that like push us. It's funny how many just like mid 30s dudes that Declan and I surround ourselves with, because those guys are 7-8 years ahead of what we want, but we can see it and we're like, okay, surround yourself with these type of people. You can learn something right now. You're not exactly in that position, but you're speaking volumes with that community aspect. And I think the podcast and what you're doing with BA Women, it's very similar to what we're doing, and it's in our own way of our version, our own mirror mentality of like
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah, I think the other thing too, I want to know with like your with your these community different events or different things. Like, I was thinking of doing like since you're so outdoorsy, like would you be able to host like outdoors like crazy events, like going like skiing like out in the middle of nowhere, like
Yes.
camping, and just like grab a group of like 12 badass women and just hit the trails?
Oh yeah, I have been working on that all winter, and
Yes.
I'm already doing it, and it's so interesting too, because like women that I would have never thought who would be interested in, like I would like friends of mine that I'd be like, oh, they're not into this stuff, are the ones who are like, will you, and like next time can I come please, like when like please, like this woman I love, Jenny Tape. It was a woman I used to au pair for. She's from like lives in Los Angeles, back in Minnesota.
Yeah, she hosts
And
the Undisputed show with Shannon and Skip, right? Jenny Taft?
no,
Taft?
no,
No, different.
Tape,
Taft.
yeah,
Dang
different.
it. Okay.
Yeah.
Heck, I was one letter off.
Jeff would be a cool guy to get on your guys' podcast, her husband. But Jenny, so she messages me, and I'm like, man, like her and I bonded over hating the cold. Like like when we were in Los Angeles together, we're like, oh, Minnesota, like can't stand it. And now like I've just like completely embraced the cold. And she reached out to me and was like, will you bring me on one of your Minnesota adventures? And I'm like, wow. You know, like I would have never thought that you would be into this, but it's just like speaks volume to, you know, like people, women, whatever in general, just they're looking for opportunities to experience life in different ways, you know, than they used to. And I think just sometimes you just got to be the first one to do it. And I'm not saying like I'm the first person who's ever skied before, but like as in my community of friends that just fucking go for it, you know?
Absolutely. Andrew, what were you saying before your Wi-Fi cut out, dude?
Yeah, I didn't even realize it cut out until I looked at the screen. I was like, oh, they didn't hear my question.
Oh no.
Dude, what was your question? Say it now.
Did it get to my articulating the mirror mentality?
Yes.
Would I?
Yes.
Okay.
100%. Yep.
Yep. So that is what I've like come to realize with what BA Women stand, like how you've evolved that. It's been a reflection of who you are, and you've been able to gravitate more people to you. And Backpocket the whole time is a mirror image of who Declan and I are at that moment in time. If we're tired, Backpocket's tired, and you know you put a lot of weight into that. But when you take your pause in 2020 and you're able to like sit in this community, you realize like, holy smokes, it's not just myself, it's so many other people. And I'm just curious right now, what's the transition like realizing like things are going to start picking up again. You're going to want to start getting back out there with hosting events. What is your mindset like in starting that path? And we're talking about being a trailblazer and getting out and doing something, and hopefully people gravitate towards you doing the right thing. Where's your head at with the kind of like the future?
Yeah, great question. It's something that I have been thinking about for an entire year. Like
Right.
I'm just like think about it every day. And I honestly, until this morning, did not have an answer to this. Because it was crazy. Like this morning I was so nervous for this podcast that I'm like, I just need to write. I need to write. That's how I deal with, like, I just get it out. So I'm writing, and I'm just like, they're going to ask me, where's BA Women going? Like, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? And it like just clicked for me because I have already been progressing my own personal brand into sharing more of how into the outdoors I am and always have been. I mean, since I was a little kid, my parents were both teachers, so every summer we spent in our Volkswagen silver minivan driving all over the country, camping in every single national forest, anything you could think of. And when I was a kid, I was like, why can't we stay in a hotel? Like, I didn't think it was that cool. But now I'm like, God, that shaped who I am. And so it's like a part of me that I've kind of kept secret. And even my obsession with plant medicine, holistic health, it's like this side of me that I've just kind of like, kept over here. Like it's still there. And after last year, I just started to be like, you know what? I don't know what to say about business right now. I don't know what to say about women in business. All these topics that were things that I was talking about before. I was like, you know what I know what to talk about right now? I know what to talk about I just went for a run. I just went skiing. I just, it's just things that were so like natural for me. I'm going to talk about functional mushrooms, like things that I've always been interested in. So I started to do that, and it was like all of a sudden the community of BA women were like, tell me more. What is this thing? Like and I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is so natural for me to talk about. But I was so fixated on BA women being like this, like it has to be women in business, this, like whatever. And I'm like, well, I can't shift it, like it has to say this one way. But I finally made the decision where I'm like, no, like I'm going to move BA women into adventure in the outdoors. Like this is just so and maybe that's going to be what it is for right now. And it's a branch of BA women. And, but it just comes so naturally to me, and it's scary because I'm like, oh my gosh, like, am I going to lose half of our community? Right. But then I'm like, everyone tells me, even though it's so hard to like believe it, but they're like, you might lose people, but you'll attract the right type, like the new people. And I'm like, okay, it's going to be okay. Like it's going to work out. But
I love that.
I just really saw this morning specifically. I'm like writing, I'm like emailing Tim, and because we try not to text each other during the day anymore because I distract him too much. So I'm like emailing him and Tim, and oh my gosh. And I'm working with the most incredible 2 women branding agency right now to completely elevate the look of the brand, the way we communicate. And I'm emailing them. I'm like, I know what BA Women is. Like, it was like this like year-long, this is it. And as of right now, like everything evolves and changes. But I just like really saw that BA Women's a catalyst. Like we are this catalyst, the missing link, this, it's not about like it's not about writing the personality traits of what a badass is. And like, here, let me cross these boxes off and now I'm a badass woman. I'm like, no, it's never been about that. And that's why I've struggled so much with people being like, what is be a woman? Because I feel like I have to define a badass woman, when I'm like, that's not up to me. Like, there's so many different versions of badass women. But what I saw was like, be a woman's the vehicle to get you to where you want to be and who you want to be and where you want to go. Even like myself included, I'm such an instigator. Like, I very much am like the person who's like, you come to me with an idea and I'm like, we're fucking doing it. Or like, you better do that, you know, like, or they're like, oh, I was kind of like, I convinced a bunch of my girlfriends to run a half marathon last summer, which like would have never happened for them, you know? And I'm like, yeah, you're absolutely doing it. Like, we're doing it, you know, in my most loving way. But I just have so many experiences in my life where like I bought a GoPro and then all of a sudden I started jumping off cliffs. Like, the GoPro was the catalyst for me to like do this stuff. Like, I read the book Eat, Pray, Love, and then I booked a flight and I went to Bali and learned from the healer in the book that I read. Like, I want to be, like, even The Art of Flight. Like, have you guys ever seen? You gotta watch The Art of Flight. That's like
one of the best.
Movie changed my life.
Let's go.
But like, I watched that movie with my buddy Ralph in college, and we that night packed our car. We were drunk, so like we didn't end up driving, thankfully, but we're like, we're going Art of Flight, like, screw college, we're going. Like, but like those type of experiences and those moments where you're like, this actually caused me to like take an action, right? Like, this actually caused me to do something and act on this. Like, I saw something that I didn't see before. And that's kind of like how BA Women started. It was like, I saw something with my relationship with women that I hadn't seen before, and I acted on it. And because of that, like, my whole life is different. And so now, like, I'm just trying to create BA Women to be that catalyst for whoever decides to be a part of our community, to do that thing, like, to book that ticket, to run that race. And, you know, that right now just looks like adventure in the outdoors.
Let's go.
I gotta get my camera back on. I think it died.
No,
it's good.
That's okay.
It's good.
Let's go.
Okay.
I'm glad we got that, because what a special moment. And to talk about a vehicle of just like, hey, Emma, want to come on the podcast? And you're like, I better figure my shit out. But I did. I was so nervous. That's amazing, though. That's truly amazing, and I genuinely believe that. And like, I'm just so jazzed up now that you've shared that. And I think really at the end of the day, like, Badass Woman is the vehicle to show that you're already a badass. And I'm going to show you content. I'm going to show you my life. I'm going to show you my experiences, give you opportunities to go on adventure, to give you the opportunity to show yourself that you're already a badass. And I think I'm trying to boil it down, because I know it's just like there's so much there, and we struggle with that too, where it's just like, hey, what's Backpocket? And you're like, do you have 45 minutes? And it's like, no, you need to say it. Yes. You need to say it in 5 seconds, and the coolest part about it is, like, you can talk all you want. Like, your passion and your energy is there, right? People are gonna feel that energy. People are gonna see that energy. They're even gonna hear that energy. And I think that is the intangible aspect that not a lot of people have. Like, you're talking about, you're the one who's doing the half marathon to push all your friends to do the half marathon. Like, they're going to look back at that experience and be like, I ran half marathon. But really, it's Emma ran it, and she drug us along with her, and we're glad that we're there with her. But I think that's like, I think just that in itself, I mean, you providing a platform or an opportunity for these people to just simply say yes, that is going to change not only their lives, but it's going to change yours. And I can already see the stars aligning. And I want to ask you, have you ever heard of the guy Steve Weigel? He's in the Twin Cities.
Yes, Steve. So Steve and I are like, oh my gosh, when we talk, it's like vision.
Yeah,
left and right. I'm like, we need someone like his sister, Sarah, she's amazing.
She's
you went
awesome.
On a trip with them, didn't you?
Yeah, I went to Thailand with them.
Yeah. So I reached out to them because I'm like, well, I know someone who already does adventure really, really well.
Yeah.
And I'm actually talking with them right now about creating, I have a couple of trip ideas. I'm actually a certified dive instructor. That's a whole nother story. But I used to live in Australia at one point and was like dive instructing. That's another story. But I'm like, let's take women on a diving trip, you know, or like I'm really interested in getting women like the going on trips, not just like, okay, we're going to go hang out in Miami and like drink, you know, like we're going to go do something that's challenging and we're going to overcome that challenge together, because I think that type of experiences, you can't put a price on that type of an experience.
Right. Yeah, and that's exactly what I grabbed the audio, Andrew, don't worry, I hit record. But the I think the aspect of like just saying yes to the opportunity and like putting yourself in that uncomfortable situation, whether it's going scuba diving or going to Thailand, for my sense, like there's so much more behind the experience than what you could ever sell to someone. And I think just the aspect of like, not only are you in Thailand or in a certain area doing some fun stuff with like in the environment itself, but like you're doing it with a bunch of people who you're probably gonna hang out with for a long time. And I mean, I'm just excited for what you guys can conjure and what kind of things you can put together, because and I think we were all kind of touching on this, like as the bars start opening up and as we start getting thrown all these BOGO deals again, and as we get offers to go tailgating and go to the Vikings games, like I understand, like yes, I do want to go back to that to a certain degree, but there's also a part of me is like, okay, I don't need this portion of the massive community and partying again. And really, at the end of the day, I really want to go on more trips to Baja California. I want to go on more trips to San Diego and go surfing with my good buddies. Like these types of smaller experiences are going to start to become a big deal, I think.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, also the experience of, I mean, doing things on your own too. I think that is becoming such a big thing, because we can't have organized workouts or, you know, I mean, those things are starting to come back, but
Right.
I just think like in the last year, I've really taken on, well, I don't need anyone else to go running with. I can go run, you know,
Right.
like, or I can go cross country ski. I can go hiking. I can go cold plunge in the lake. Like I've been so accustomed to, like I played volleyball in college. So I've just always been a part of like a team. And I
Right.
think that learning how to really enjoy your own company and find out what really fills you up is going to become huge. And I think this year I wish I had a statistic. You should totally like back check me like Dak Shepard on this, but like the outdoor industry, the amount of money that was spent this year was insane. I mean, Hoygards in St. Louis Park, I get my skis fixed and stuff there. I brought them skis in September. I just learned how to downhill ski this year. I've been snowboarding
Congrats.
forever, but I'm learning how to do that this year. So
Do you like
definitely
skiing or
average on
snowboarding
that.
better?
I kind of like skiing more. I like can't believe I'm saying it because I've been snowboarding since I was like 14, but this is like the dumbest reason why, but I just am so sick of strapping in and out of my board. Like
Right.
I was like, I can just click in and I'm ready to go all day. Like I don't need to stop or get stuck on a catwalk. Or I also had an accident snowboarding, so I'm also a little tainted from that. So I'm like, let's try something new. Like, let's try skiing.
We're
But
happy to
my
have
point
ya.
about Hoygaard, so I know I love that you're so into skiing. But I brought them my skis to like put the bindings on and everything in September. They're like, oh, so how about I think they said December 5th. I was like, to put my bindings on, and they're like, there's over 500 skis in the back right now. It's like that's how many people have bought cross country skis, downhill skis this year. It's really cool, right? Like it's really, you know, I think I'm a big believer in the more people that get in the outdoors, the better it's going to be for the entire world, because as much as we want to understand something, I don't think you really understand it until you experience it. And the more people that experience it, it's gonna be good.
It's gonna be insane. I'm excited. One thing specifically to outdoors that I'd like to touch on, just like because it sounds like you have a lot of amazing stories of why adventure is important. Do you have a good story for that specifically, like why adventure is so important in your life? Do you have like one or two stories that you'd be able to share with us?
Oh man. Yeah, okay, so here's one. Actually amazing. I went and studied abroad in Australia. Actually met a couple Tommies at the university I went to in Bond University, which was so random on the other side of the world. Yeah. I went to Augsburg, by the way. But and yeah. So anyway, so I study abroad there, and I I met people from all over the world in this experience, and one specifically, a person that became one of my best friends, his name was Corey, and Corey was from Long Island, and he was a surfer. And so he would get up at like 4 a.m., take the bus, go surf, come back, like scramble to class. He would sleep on people's couches, go surf, he was like one of the most extraordinary human beings, like would be out till 4 a.m, get up, go surf. And we just like created this whole community while we were in Australia. And we traveled to New Zealand together, like these people that I would have never, ever known if it weren't for me traveling there. And sadly, Corey died a week after we moved back to the States. He got hit by a drunk driver. He was 24. And like the reason I share that is like that experience with all those people, like we are bonded together forever. I mean, I just went to one of my good friend Luke's wedding last year in that group of people, but it's just like there's so many, like when you travel, you get to really be anyone you want to be. Like there's no view of you. There's no like you have to
prerequisites
show up the way yeah, like you don't have, like no one knows like your nickname from your sports team. No one knows anything about you. And so there's just like this level of intimacy that happens when you travel. And so that was really life-changing for me. That was amazing. Oh my gosh, I have so many stories. Like diving stories. I have like when I was living in Bali, and like I was working with a healer there. That was amazing. Like she was treating me with herbs and blessings and everything. But I'm kind of all over the place. Sorry. Is that helpful? I don't know. Like,
yeah, it is.
I could tell you more about that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think what's cool too, and Andrew and I have been talking about this a lot, in retrospect to, COVID and what it showed everyone about working remote, is for the people who like don't have kids, have a job that they do work remote and it's not going anywhere. Like, this is the time to have a little Corey in you. Like, go and bum around and travel to different places you've never been before, and do it during the work week, where you can, as long as you have Wi-Fi tied somewhere, you can pretty much do anything. Like I'm tied into my hotspot right now and streaming like 1080p over Wi-Fi. and if you can get like paid for this, like if this is a serviceable act, like start finding new places to go. Like you don't have to necessarily be stuck in Minnesota if you don't want to be. And it's just cool to see.
Make it happen.
Right. Make it happen and find different locations. Like since living in this RV, I've been living in it since November, and everyone's like, oh, how's van life? Is it sick? Like you traveling around, blah, blah, blah. It's like, not really. Like I'm stationary on a farm, but on the weekends because I'm in this RV, I have like an outlet to go to San Diego and surf for the first time. I have the opportunity to drive down to Mexico and explore there. I go up north and explore the tree in like Flagstaff and Sedona and see massive rocks. Like, there's an aspect to moving around and doing it every single day, but there's also an aspect of just like picking your stuff up and placing it and picking up and moving again. And you'd be so surprised as to like how feasible that is. Like, it's really not van life is really not that feasible. Like, RV life not really either, because you're having to pay everywhere you go. You have to like find a spot to sleep at night. It's like there's so many things that are going against you. But like, hey, look, if you have a rent and you don't want to live there anymore, but it's still $500 to $700, you can pay that same amount to Airbnb or even a little less, and you'll just have, and you can live about your means as you go along. And I just think that kind of aspect, people need to start doing more of that. Like, I want people to do that so badly after kind of being through this experience already.
That's literally why I have taken the jobs that I've taken and I'm creating my life around my lifestyle. And I think that also comes back to like my point around the doing, where even knowing how much money you actually need to make every month, I just recently started to pay way more attention to my budget. I've been working way more on that. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I don't need to make a ton of money, you know, like what matters to me is having the lifestyle that I love. And sometimes, like, you know, like being in a position where you are making a lot of money, you don't have the time to go live the lifestyle you love. And, you know, maybe this will shift for me in my 30s or whatever, but I'm like, I've been thinking this way since I was like 15. Like, it hasn't really changed for me. I didn't even live in the same place for more than 3 months up until moving back to Minnesota 3 years ago. Like, I have always been like, how can I stay nimble and be able to move and work remotely? And you know, like tomorrow or Saturday, I'm going to Portland for 2 weeks, and that's Tim fun. And I stay there and we work there and we ski. And I think it's hard too to see that when you see that kind of stuff on social media, you don't see the whole story.
Right.
And like, you're like, oh, like that's so expensive and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, I mean, it is expensive, but like, I don't spend my money on other things. Like, I don't spend my money on clothes in the way that some people do, or on booze in the way some people do, or, you know, nothing to make those things wrongs, but like, I'm so clear on like what my priorities are that I make it happen. Like, I'm like, I'm going to make this happen. And also, like, here's an example. We go and ski in March, because in March it's spring skiing. So to have an unlimited pass, it's like $250 versus paying like $150 a day in Vail or something. Oh, yeah. So it's like, you can make it happen, right? Like, it's just
people aren't as smart as you, Emma. You know that? People just aren't as smart as you. I think that's what their real problem is. They're not smart enough.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is.
I have been making my own money since I was 14. I never had an allowance. My parents taught me to work really early, and I just learned so early on that like money is my freedom. And the more I am smart with this, the more freedom I have. And it's actually something I'm really passionate about right now, specifically with women. I've been sharing more through my own personal account about budgeting, and because it, you know, like, I do have people say to me sometimes where they're like, oh, your life is so like extravagant or whatever. And I'm like, this is also something I've been working on since I was like 20. And I've been building up to this and learning tricks and learning ways to do this. And by no means am I traveling in like extreme luxury. Like, I don't know. I could go on forever about that.
Yeah, you're making things happen, and that's what's the coolest aspect. You're putting it on the calendar, and you're holding yourself accountable to get out there and seek adventure and seek the discomfort and just enjoy the ride. And that's, at the end of the day, what we're all talking about here is loving the process, not the actual results. Because yeah, you can say you went to Colorado, but the process of like making sure you're doing spring skiing and getting all these parties involved. That's the half of the adventure, and that's half the fun. And I'm curious, like in these moments, since you are a wildly average outdoor enthusiast, in these moments when pressure is becoming stress and you're getting fired up to be outside, to seek the discomfort, what do you hold in your back pocket, Emma, to overcome these situations?
Oh, such a good question. Uh, the one that consistently comes back is actually a question that my boyfriend asked me, Tim. He asked me in like, I think it was the very beginning of BA Women, when I just remember like crying in our living room, being like, this is messed up. This is before the event happened. And I'm trying to please certain people. I'm trying to like do all the things, and I'm just completely burnt out. And he looked at me and he's like, well, what would a badass do? And I was like, fuck, like this, like, fuck, like kind of like this, like, it was almost like it was like a good, like, get up, like a good, like,
grow up.
And yeah, kind of like, just like, come on, like in a loving way. But that's definitely like what I hold in my back pocket when I am questioning myself, when I'm feeling stuck, when I'm not feeling creative, when I just come back to that question, well, what would a badass do? And the answer is always different for every situation, but I think anyone could apply that for whoever you want to be in your life. You can be, you want to be a comedian, right? It's like, you can ask yourself, like, what would a comedian do, right? Or what would whoever that person that you're pursuing, or that, what would that person do? And then you act from that. So that's my other question to your question.
No, I love it. I think what you're talking about is like, what you do is fueled by your why. And I find that in myself all the time. And what Andrew and I always talk about is like, when these situations come up, it's no longer glamorous, and those types of glitzy things you may have been doing it for, downloads or likes or just in more followers, whatever it is, whatever metric, when those things are eliminated and off the table, like, why are you really doing what you're doing? Like, why do you really love stand-up if you continue to go every single night and bomb? Or like, why are you going through all this insane rigmarole to find a venue? Like, what is even the point, And it always comes back to that why. So I love challenging that. And I think one thing, I did this to a bunch of 50-year-old construction men at 5 a.m. the other day. And it's a quick story, but it's really funny because it's tying into what exactly you're talking about. So I work on a construction job. It's a nuclear power plant out here in Arizona. And we start at 6 a.m. every morning, and the first usually 20 minutes is the leaders like myself and other people who are running the work. They just talk about like safety all the time. And whenever something bad happens in the field, like someone falls off a ladder, or these aren't things that actually happen, but like someone gets hurt. Yeah. It's a big deal, like a massive deal in any regard, and you have to find a way to respond. So they tasked me with speaking to all these guys at 6 a.m. and I get up there and I whisper to my boss right before I go up. I go, stick with me. I'm just like, how I'm gonna intro this may not sound good, but just stick with me. And I went up there and I was like, hey guys, how's it going? Blah, blah, blah. Like, I just want to ask you guys a very simple question. Like, why are you guys here? And I just was like, seriously, why are you guys here? We didn't ask you to show, like, we asked you to show up, but like, why did you decide to come here? And one guy said, because, I got to pay for my family to eat. And I said, perfect. I said, Paco, you nailed it. Like, you're right on the right track. But do you understand how you can get distracted by the what? You know, what are we doing here? I introed with that too. I was like, okay, well, what are we doing here? And everyone was still like, what are you talking about? And I go, if you just think about why you're doing anything, you'll never have a safety incident. If you think about when you're climbing down a 30-foot ladder and you're thinking about why you're doing that, you're never going to take a false step because you're thinking about it in the moment. If you're thinking about why you're getting up on this ladder and you know you're not supposed to or whatever, think about it. If you just simply think about why, that's all that matters. And I just cut it there. And like all these guys come up and give me shit about it and whatever. But it's so simple. It's just like if you think about why, it makes it reinforces what you're doing. Put it that way.
A lot of soapbox. I was just envisioning. No, I love that. Also, like I give you so much credit to do something like that especially in a setting where, I don't know, maybe I'm not assuming that there's all men in that setting, but
all men.
Just all
not
men.
A single woman in the crowd, unfortunately.
Okay, so but to ask a vulnerable thing like that, you don't even know what that probably did for people, even if they might have like laughed about it or like brushed it off. I think that's just really cool. I'm glad you shared that. That's like, I love that. Like I'm like even visualizing like climbing a mountain. Like I've climbed a mountain in Bali once, and like, you know, you get distracted where you're like, what the fuck am I doing here? Like, why the fuck am I doing this? Sorry, I'm swearing. I'm assuming that's okay, but or not okay, whatever.
It's perfectly cool.
But okay, cool. I feel like that disclaimer, everyone always says that on podcasts, even though they know it's fine. They're like, oh, sorry, didn't know. I'm like, you know it's fine. Okay, that was me doing that. But yeah, I just like thinking about that where you come back, you're like, okay, but what's my why? Like, what's my why? And that's what I was struggling with BA Women. Like, I did not remember my why. I was like, last year I was like, why am I doing this? Why, like, now that there's no event, I'm like, why am I doing this? And I just, every day someone would talk to me about the business, or I think I was on a podcast last year, and just the whole time I'm like, I feel like I'm lying. I don't know why I'm doing this. And that's why I just think it's so important to get reconnected to that, because, you know, like without intention, then you're just kind of, I don't know, just doing random things.
You're a worm.
Right?
You're just a worm in the dirt.
Yeah. You're a worm? Is that a saying, or did you just make that up?
It's totally a Declanism.
No.
Oh, okay.
Andrew used to say it
it's not?
Andrew would say, I asked Andrew what it was like going to Lollapalooza, and Andrew just said, dude, you're just a worm in the dirt out there. Just moving around.
Oh, it's my quote.
That's you.
Oh, that's me.
Yeah, dude. So anytime we go to concerts and we're just like fucked up in the crowd, it's just like, let's go worm out with the boys.
Oh my God, I'm using that forever. That is so good.
Oh man.
Just keep moving. Oh, that's amazing. Deck, that's really cool, dude. I didn't know you did that. And Emma, I think you probably realize this about Backpocket, or just or Declan himself, is he is a unique disruptor with like good intentions. Like another great example. So he's in the construction industry, and his mindset just doesn't really belong in the construction industry, but he makes impacts consistently, and everyone, like his higher ups, notice him more, and in good ways. And another like funny way of him doing this is on LinkedIn. He is just fearlessly himself, putting out every piece of content that he would put on TikTok, but he'd also put it on LinkedIn. And the amount of like growth that we've seen from our end on Backpocket, and just him in general, from just constantly being himself but also disrupting a space, is really cool. And I know this is the Emma Sievers podcast, but also I just want to give my man Declan, because I don't get to see him all the time. Like now that he's in Arizona,
I haven't seen him
once
since December. Yeah, I haven't seen you since legitimately December when we did Best Christmas Ever. But yeah, craziness. Thanks, man.
Well,
you.
to be someone that
Jack, man.
Oh, Benzie, just to get cut off. I was just gonna say, like, even people who like comedians, or I'm just bringing that up because we're just on kind of on that topic, like to be that funny, like you have to be that, like you have to pay attention to things that much. You have to care about something that much. You have to be intentional. It's kind of like people who who are some of the happiest people I know have seen the darkest shit in their lives. You know, like I just think that it's a misconception that funny people don't feel, or like, it's like, yeah, actually they probably like are way more in tune than you actually think they are. Like I brush off being I laugh a lot at like things I say because I really care a lot, and one of my nervous like tics is to laugh at myself because I'm like, oh, did I just make everyone uncomfortable because I just went there really fast. But I think that it's just we're all I know I think it's pretty clear that the three of us definitely care about impact.
Yeah, I would also say
Yes.
we're also three incredibly wildly average people who just give a shit, like we just really
Yeah.
care and are passionate about things that kind of just turn our light bulb on. And we're all over the place in sense of like we have a lot of light bulbs that turn on, and we just got to figure out what path makes the most sense. And sometimes you just get lost in the sauce a lot, but the fact that we are actively aware of trying to find the right light bulb that makes the most sense for our lives, or any of that stuff, like that's really the point at the end of the day. Like I always tell people who have a lot of anxiety is like, if you're having anxiety about something you care about, then like you're in the right spot. Like welcome to the club,
Yes.
So I think we're all in that sense, and we're all just super average. And I really want to know what your average quality is. And I know we explained this to you over email, which I'm glad we did. But essentially, it's something that you care about, that you're trying to improve on every single day.
So I have to tell you what Tim and I discussed about what we thought it was before I asked you for more context.
Perfect.
So in my mind, I'm like overthinking the shit out of it, which clearly is not my average trait. I've definitely mastered overthinking everything.
You're
And so
really
I'm like,
good at
okay.
that.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, so it's not what I'm good at, but not what I'm bad at. So it's in the between. I'm like, okay, what's in the between? And then Tim's like, think of it as like a survivalist thing. Like, what do you do to survive? And I'm just like, we're like going back and forth for like an hour, and then I'm like, I'm just gonna ask them tomorrow what it is. And I like such better context. But so okay, in light of this story, I feel like the best way to explain one of my most average traits really does have to do with my like recreational activity, and like more so to like why I even say like I'm a wildly average outdoors enthusiast. But more specifically, since I love how you brought this up that you surf, so I am like awful at surfing. Like, and I know that's not average,
Same.
but like, yeah, let me get to my point though. Like, passion for surfing, way up here. Skill level at surfing, way down here. And I have been trying to get better at surfing for years. Like, I tried in Australia the first time on my like 21st birthday, and probably was not the best time to do that because I was really hungover. But like, then I tried getting in the water. I have a lot of passion for it, and I go into the water in really stupid places where I've like literally gotten pulled out before by people and kicked out. Like, I was in Canggu in Bali, and I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna go for it. Like, just gonna get in the water, and this is like one of the best places in the world to surf. And I'm just like, okay, like, and I go in, and I got dragged in a wave, and someone pulled me out, and they're like, get out of the water. I'm like, okay, I'm sorry, like, I mean, it was really stupid. I shouldn't have done that. But and like, but I am so in love with the culture of it. Like I, as of a week ago, started messaging this, I think it's called Alaskan Surf Adventures. And it's like an expedition basically in Alaska to go surfing, like in cold water. And I'm so like, I went up to Duluth. I have friends that surf in Superior. I'm like the biggest surf poser you're ever gonna meet. Like, I'm like, I've never even got up on a wave. Like if I get up on a wave, you guys will be the first ones to see the video of it. But I have such passion for the outdoors, but I am like by no means an expert at like any of the activities that I do. And so I'm super passionate, but my skill level is wildly average, like really average.
You unpack that question perfectly. And so like so many people will say like cooking, like that is the number one response we get every single time is cooking. And we're like,
Oh,
yeah,
really?
we're all average cooks. Like at the end of the day, there's like some star cooks, but everyone always resorts to cooking. And Declan and I hear it and we're like, yep, cooking, we gotcha.
Right
But
on.
the way that you looked right on, yeah, good. But the way that you looked at that as it's not necessarily like how you are comparably to anyone. It's the amount of like care you have for that activity. Like Declan and I claim we're wildly average guys, but we're wildly average podcasters. Like we're not the best at this, but we love coming and doing this every single day and every chance we get to be a little bit better at. You love to just attempt to be on a surfboard and and just have fun trying.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you get better or not. You have fun doing it time and time again. That is like being average. We're all average at the end of the day. I love that response, Emma. So well, way to unpack that as we walked you through the meaning of it. I think at the end of the day, we came to the right conclusion.
Yeah,
well
I think we crushed. I really do think we crushed in that sense. But and to your point as well. So like my first time surfing ever was 3 weeks ago, and I just like any other average quality, the waves and surfing will humble you. Like you will learn that water is powerful and waves will take you. And like honestly, half the battle, or maybe even a third of the battle of surfing is like understanding what kind of wave is about to hit you, how they're forming, and like where you should be in relation to that, and then like how to dodge them so that you can get, because I didn't realize this, like you battle all the shitty waves at the beginning, and then once you get out far enough, then it's just like slow rolling, just like easy, and like it's the coolest place in the world to be out on in the middle of the ocean or wherever you are, and you're near a bunch of other surfers and you're just reading waves. You see a big one coming, you paddle towards a little bit, turn around, and then try and catch it. Like it's the coolest. Like that in itself is surfing to me. Like I think because I've got up once and I fell over right away, but like
well done.
I loved just getting to that point of almost equilibrium, if you will.
Oh, you just reminded me so much. I was like about to say so pitted, or it was a wave, and it was just so. Do you know what video I'm talking about right now?
Yeah,
Please
we are.
tell me you know.
Yeah, I forget what it is specifically, but I just wanted to go ahead and put this out there. Like we're self-identified kooks. Like we love the surf culture, but we don't belong, and we're just here to support. We're definite kooks.
Yes. But we need more spaces like that though. Like kind of back again to the point of like we all think that like we have to like be the best at something or to belong somewhere, and like whatever happened to just like enjoying life just to enjoy it. Like there doesn't have to be this like this has to be like it's gonna be an accomplishment I get, or it's another thing. Like kind of say what I'm saying? Like it's just like more experiences where you're just like, yeah, I'm not great at this, and I'm willing to like be embarrassed and do it still, and hopefully have people around me that are like, good job, not like me getting ripped out of the water.
Right. You want humbling experiences.
Save my life. Yeah.
I think what it is you want humbling experiences that make you cherish the small things.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, definitely. That's like all I think about with my friend Corey. Like we lived the best time of our lives. We did stupid things, all of us in Australia and New Zealand. It was like the biggest thing he taught me was like he'd be the person who would come up to you, and if you were on your phone, he'd like slap it in your face. Like he'd be like, what are you doing? Like stop, like slap it in your face. He's like, I'm here with you right now. Like, hello, I'm here. And he just was someone who would always make any moment the best moment, where we'd be like, wow, this is cool. And he's like, you know how we're gonna make it even like cooler? We're gonna go jump in that glacier right now. And when there's like, you know, a river running through it, and we're like, this is the stupidest thing ever, why would you make us do this? They're like, because we're just gonna do it. Like you just like didn't question, you know, like
Yeah.
just making the most of every moment.
Absolutely.
Yes, and we've been able to make the moment tonight, and we were only here because Sophie challenged us to have you on the podcast, and we are so thankful she did that.
Aw.
Because tonight has been just a really cool experience to unpack your story. I followed you for the last couple of years. I've gotten to know all your friends from Giselle to Jason Kweens and all this, but now we've had the time for you to sit down on the back pocket. But we want to continue this path of your circle.
Yeah.
So we'd like to ask you, can you challenge us that of someone in your circle that you think would be a great fit for the back pocket?
I have a list filled of people that I wish I could share every single person on this podcast right now. So I will share all of them with you after.
Nice.
I have know people that have done the wackiest, crazy. Like I know someone who's walked around the entire world, like walked the entire world.
We need
one
to
of
know
Tim's
that guy.
friends has. Yeah, one of
Who
Tim's
is he?
friends has
What's his
biked.
name?
His name's Andrew Cease.
All right, nice.
One of Tim's buddies biked from Minnesota to the tip of Argentina. Biked
Holy
all the way there.
smokes.
Took him 2 years. Call him Matt Gorzlandzik. We call him David Goggins.
Wow.
He's definitely a Goggins. Just like I love stories like that, so I can't wait to share more people. But I have to share some badass women, of course. One that you definitely need to interview. Her name's Colleen Eversman. I interviewed her a couple years ago. She's in San Francisco, so it's cool now you guys can do remote episodes, but she is such an incredible photographer, and I look to her, like I so admire her with her voice in social justice and in education, and I just think she, like, I learned so much from her, and I think she would just be such a cool guest for you all to have. Another woman, Kelsey Braun, she is the founder of what's called Cuyuna Cove in Crosby, Minnesota. They created a glamping resort. Super cool. Yeah, you guys should check it out. It's unbelievable. Yeah, I have such a long list, you guys. Like, I was like, I don't know how to I was like, I don't know how to tell you one person. This is not easy for me. So
No, that's great.
I think this is perfect because challenge accepted across the board.
Yeah.
We'll unpack that. And Deck and I are trying to push ourselves to get on people in new locations, because now that we've dialed in this space, we've quote unquote dominated the sandbox of Minneapolis. It's time to unpack other spaces.
Yeah. I mean, also the cool thing too is, like, you know, with my podcast, like, I interview women at this time. I mean, I haven't interviewed any men yet, so it's fun to be able to.
Can we be the first guys?
I mean, maybe. That's one thing that I struggle with big time.
What a big ask on my end. Wow.
Oh, it is a big ask. But
you could totally say no. We're hunks.
Well, here's the thing is that I don't necessarily want to say no, because there are, but you know, like.
Would you interview men in general? What do you would a male podcast guest be good? It would be good. Okay.
I would love that, but right now I feel like it's important for me to continue to elevate women's voices.
Yes.
So
yes, 100% agree with that.
But I do want to do that, and that's what I'm up to right now. But yeah, I have have so many cool kick-ass people for you to guys, because I haven't been able to interview all of them. I'm like, go on someone else's podcast because you can't come on mine.
Right. Good call.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, I appreciate the intel, and like, if you ever need guests or anybody close by, or other podcasts to go on, we got you covered because we got plenty of them.
Oh, thanks, guys.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I've been following you both for the first time I saw your podcast was with Alex. By the way, I butcher people's last names, but Caruso, or is that
Alex Corsel. Alex Corsel. Yeah, she works. She used to.
Okay.
Yeah, she's the mental health.
I know her. So yeah, it was amazing. That was like but I remember the fact that you guys knew that she was like the dab queen, or like whatever you called her. Like, I was like, God, like, this is great. Like, how did you guys figure that out? Like, but that was the first episode I ever saw, and it's been so cool. Like, you guys are just so committed to amplifying voices, and I just so appreciate too the format of how like, I don't feel like I have to come buttoned up to the show. I don't feel like I have to pretend to be something that I'm not. It's just this level of acceptance. So keep up the good work. I think a lot of people admire, myself included, what you guys are up to.
Awesome.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But we still have one final question for you.
Oh, okay.
What did you learn today from the moment that you woke up to when we're having this conversation?
Oh my gosh. What did I learn today? I definitely don't affiliate with any religion, or but I do believe in something bigger than me. And last night I'm about to get really cheesy right here, but this is who I am. Last night I actually was really hot because I took a bath last night, and I like put this thing on my face. My face was like burning, so I was like, I need to go stand outside. I'm so hot. Like, I don't know, whatever this product did to my face. And I'm standing outside, and I'm still nervous about this podcast episode, by the way. And I'm just like standing outside, and I like look up, and the clouds are moving. It's just like beautiful outside, and like I see a couple stars. And I just look up, and I'm like, what am I supposed to say? Like, what am I what am I here for? Like, what am I supposed to do? And like, I have very private moments like that. And especially in nature, like I don't, like I said, I'm not affiliated with any religion or anything. But just like, and it was like this moment of like relief came over me of like, I don't have to have the answers. I don't have to know what to do. Like, it's almost like this, it's all going to be okay. And I just like this instant release happened. And this morning I woke up and I started to write, and I had this realization of like, oh my God, BA women is catalyst. BA women is this missing link. Like, it was like, for me, like, I think I really learned that like, ask and you can receive. Like, ask, put it out there, like what I need, or what and it's all going to be okay.
Absolutely.
It's all going to be good.
Absolutely.
And and then I had this conversation with you guys tonight. So I'm just learning to trust that it's all working out the way it's supposed to be. So,
and it sounds so simple. It's not easy, and it's an ever-growing process. So we're all in it together. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I cannot wait to like be together with you two again. Yes. Did I tell you? Sorry, I keep adding onto this podcast, but Declan, did I tell you, like, do you remember meeting me at the polar plunge thing or whatever with Embrace the North? This is my first memory of you, really quick. We're in this cold plunge. or whatever. And it's like, you guys are singing, it's like whatever the song was that you guys made up or whatever. And we're like singing this song. And I'm like, okay, we made it. I think we did like 15 minutes or something. And I get out and you get out, Declan, and you look at me and you're like, start running, just start running. And I'm like, okay. And then you're like, slap your arms like this, like whip your arms. And I'm like, okay. And we're like running, just like, I'm like, we're just like Neanderthals running in the middle of the winter, like in our bathing suits, like whipping our arms. And I was just like, that was the first time I met you.
That is amazing. I love that. And I do
and
remember
like,
it.
Of course. Oh, you do? Okay. I was like, such an odd way to meet someone, but I'm like, no, that's pretty representative of the type of people we are, I think.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it does warm your arms up because you're cold as hell when you get out of that tub. But yes, that's a hell of a how we met story. Absolutely. And I can't wait to like continue this, honestly. Like I know we're all on a Zoom call, but we're all going to be like surfing big waves at some point together. And I'm very confident in that. But I think one thing I want to leave you with, just because you were talking about, you know, asking and being worried about answering, it's like you're never, even on this podcast and in life, you're never going to be asked a question that you don't know the answer to. So just remember that. Just remember that.
I love that.
Yeah. No, and that's what'll always put you at ease. You're never gonna have an answer that, or you get the point. But I'm just excited that we had this podcast today. I'm excited that we got to, you know, really put this into formality, and it's gonna be just fun to look back at this one day when we're on the beaches together. So I really appreciate the time, Emma.
Yes. All right.
Godspeed.
Do I turn it off now or?
No, you're good.
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
Oh, yay!